Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members and officers, and welcome to the Development Control Committee meeting on August the 27th. First of all, I will just take you through the fire alarm procedures. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear and the side of the room. You go down the stairs and we meet in the War Memorial Park. I should advise you also that the meeting is being webcast live on the internet. It is, isn't it? Good. And please, can you all switch off your mobile phones? Next, I have apologies for absence and substitutions. Apologies from Councillor Frost, and Councillor Leeks is substituting for Councillor Tucker. And Councillor Dunlop. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Oh yes, Councillor Thankham.
I'll just declare I am a Hampshire County Councillor, and there was some Hampshire County Councillor previous land. It shouldn't have any effect on anything, but I just thought for clarity I should declare it.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, we move on to urgent matters. Under urgent matters, I'm just going to warn that item 8, the Overton site, has been deleted from the agenda, so if anybody is here on that behalf, you can go home. Right. Next, minutes of the committee meeting held on the 30th of July. Can I have members confirm the minutes, please? Agreed, thank you. And now we move on to the applications for permission and public participation thereon. For the benefit of the members of the public attending, I would just explain to you who everybody is around this table. My name is Councillor Donald Sherlock, and I'm the chairman of this committee, and Councillor Court is the deputy chairman. Down the sides of the table to the right and left, lower down, are the councillors who sit on the committee and who will be making the decisions on the applications this evening. Immediately to my right and left are the officers who will be advising the councillors. Along the back, under the windows, are those councillors who are not on the committee but have asked to present their views, as well as additional officers who may be called upon to help councillors. In addition, I would like to explain to you that the Development Control Committee is a regulatory committee and not a political meeting. The committee will be looking at the evidence brought before us tonight and will make a decision based on planning reasons. We are guided by national and local planning guidance and policy. And further, I understand that planning can be emotive, and I ask that everyone remains polite and professional throughout the evening. And may I ask all speakers, including visiting members, to speak clearly and to return to their seats once their presentation is complete. No further dialogue between members of the committee and speakers will be permitted once questioning has finished. And may I ask all committee members to avoid repetition and ask them to keep any comments on each item to a maximum of 4 minutes. Thank you. We move straight to item 5 on the agenda. Item 1, application 1 on the agenda. Land at Chapel Hill, Kingsclere Road, Basingstoke, Hampshire. And I have speakers in the form of objectors: Leslie Graddon, Southview Residents Association; in support, Mike Shepherd of Sentinel Housing and Anna Gillings of Turley Associates; and the ward councillors, Councillor Harvey and Councillor James. And you will all speak after the officers have made their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the redevelopment of the site at Chapel Hill for up to 578 dwellings, including the conversion of the White Building and following demolition of the existing buildings. The application before you this evening has made an outline with only the principal development and the means of access for consideration, with other matters to be dealt with by reserved matters applications subsequently. To demonstrate that the site can accommodate the amount of development proposed, the application is supported by various plans and information, including an indicative layout plan in your agenda papers and also an indicative housing mix. The officer's report sets out a number of key benefits of the proposal, including the reuse of a redundant brownfield site, contribution towards the council's current 5-year housing land supply, and the provision of 40% affordable housing. If I can draw members' attention to the update paper, which includes the details of the viewing panel, a further response from Thames Water, which has resulted in the removal of condition 31 as set out in the report, a further letter of objection covering the matters relating to Chapel Hill Bridge and school catchment area, which brings the total number of objections on this application to 4. The officer's comments on those 2 issues are also covered in the update paper, and some minor amendments to the conditions number 1 and 33. The officer's recommendation is for approval, subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement.
Right, thank you for that. Leslie Graddon, please. Yes. You will have 4 minutes, and I will tell you when there's 1 minute to go, and you press the big black button on the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Graddon, and I'm the chair of the Southview Residents Association. The members of the association are all people who live in the Southview area and are clearly deeply concerned about developments in the area in which they live. The committee wished me to raise 2 issues for the Development Control Committee to consider. 1. Education. We are concerned that the Winklebury schools are designated for the Lily catchment area. To get to these schools, young mothers with pushchairs or prams will have to walk a distance of around 2.2 miles. This isn't sensible. Google Smart Pace indicates that this journey could take up to 42 minutes for such people. The Oak Ridge Junior Infant School and the Vine School are much closer. The head teacher at the Oak Ridge School has said that there is room to expand these schools. We feel that many parents will try to get their children into these schools, into these nearer schools, but these schools will not get any of the money for the education in the S106 agreement, as the money will all be directed at Winklebury. Now, previously, there has been no housing on the Lily side of the Kingsclear Road. Now there is going to be a substantial development on this site, and we think that the catchment area needs further thinking. And there will be a need for a pedestrian crossing on the Kingsclear Road for the safety of children attending the Oak Ridge or Vine schools. The second issue which the committee have asked me to raise is that concerning road safety under the railway bridge. We don't feel that it's sensible to ask cyclists to dismount and share a widened pedestrian path. There will always be the problem of cyclists riding down at speed down this pedestrian path. We wonder whether traffic planners could investigate the possibility of traffic lights controlling the traffic on both sides of the bridge, allowing traffic flow in one direction at a time only under that bridge, and then the cyclists could safely remain on the road. If that were to happen, the current traffic lights at the existing pedestrian crossing would then no longer be needed, as traffic in each direction would be regularly brought to a halt. We are strongly in favour of widening the pedestrian pathway. There seems to be a storage area built into one side of the bridge. We wonder whether this area could be utilised as part of the path widening scheme. As a final point, we are not in favour of allowing HGVs under the bridge. They do have other possible routes. We do, of course, accept that buses will continue to travel under the bridge. And we offer these suggestions as constructive proposals for the Development Control Committee to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Graddon. Are there any questions from members? for Mr. Graddon? No, thank you very much, Mr. Graddon. Now can we have Mike Shepherd and Anna Gillings, please? You will have 4 minutes between you, and I'll give you a notice when there's a minute to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to be able to present this proposal by Sentinel Housing Association to regenerate a derelict brownfield site into a vibrant and economically viable community in the centre of town, which if approved tonight will result in the construction of up to 578 new homes. Sentinel is the largest and only locally run housing association in North Hampshire, and as a landlord we own and manage around 8,500 homes from our head office in Kingsclear Road, Basingstoke. We've worked with residents and the local community at consultation events between January and September 2013 to develop this application, and these events were attended by over 150 people. And this extensive and inclusive process has directly resulted in only receiving 4 objections to the site. We've worked hard to produce a flagship scheme that is fully compliant with planning policy and achieves a wide measure of support and encouragement from officers, councillors and the community. We've also worked hard to address the local community's views and concerns in the final scheme design wherever possible, especially in relation to the greater use of the open space, retention of the white building and delivery of a low-rise housing scheme. A fundamental principle of this regeneration has been to improve access between the site and the existing community. Our plans include the provision of a pedestrian and cycleway along the entire frontage of Kingsclear Road, down Chapel Hill. We have listened to the local community and worked hard with Hampshire County Council to deliver a scheme of improvements under Chapel Hill Bridge to suit all uses. The development of the site provides for new open space to be delivered on the site and integrated within the heart of the new housing and closer to the wider community, increasing and promoting the opportunities for greater general use. The open space provided on site meets the new standards for multifunctional green space as required. The scheme also makes a very important contribution to affordable housing, which is in desperate need within Basingstoke. The site will provide over 230 new affordable homes for rent and shared ownership, again meeting planning requirements. We will also deliver a range of infrastructure improvements alongside our development, which will directly benefit the existing community. These include a contribution of around £900,000 towards new community to improve community facilities, new off-site highway improvements to the routes into town, £2 million worth of investment and improvement and upgrading of local primary schools, and that hasn't as yet been defined by the Education Authority, and improve access to both the Oakridge and the Winklebury schools. I fully endorse the officer's conclusions and recommendation in support of the application for these 578 new homes and trust that you will look favourably on the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Chair. You are saying that you are providing additional funds besides the 106 agreement to have a safer route to school. Is that right?
Those are secured within the 106 agreement. There's a number of off-site upgrades and crossing points to facilitate access to Oakridge and an improved route to the Winklebury schools.
And if I may, they're delivered by 278 agreement, which means that the applicant will undertake the works.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Potter.
Mike, obviously will return, I think, probably to the issues of education in terms of catchment areas with other people. In regard to the problems that occur under the bridge, obviously the chair of the Southview Residents Association has made a number of points. I mean, would you accept that there is still room for further refinement, really, to those arrangements? It seems to me it's a problem that hasn't yet been solved, in my own view. And would you accept there is some room still for discussion about the detail of those matters?
Yeah, alongside the application, we've submitted an outline plan really that shows a number of works to the highway, including the bridge, but also the shared pedestrian and cycle route down Chapel Hill. Now that's been approved by Hampshire County Council as the highway authority as a workable proposition, but they are only at an outline stage, and there's a period of further detail to go through alongside the other agreements, which we are quite happy to work in an open manner to progress.
Any more questions? Thank you both very much indeed. Now the ward councillors, please. Councillor Paul Harvey and Councillor Mrs. James. You have 4 minutes between you.
Do we not
and
have 4 minutes each?
Each. Yes, sorry, for 4 minutes each.
Thank you, Chair. Nearly shut us up, that's all right. Sat here this evening, I think it's interesting just to note to members the journey that this site's been on. I think sat here this evening, it's interesting just to note the journey that this site has been on, and where Sentinel really had taken the application in the past couple of years. And it is fair to say that their engagement with the residents, their engagement with us as ward members has been excellent, and we have managed to shape a significant proportion of where this is now in front of you. There are elements that need to be resolved. It isn't the complete perfect package, but then again, you are tonight considering an outline application, not a reserved matters one, and that does give us an opportunity to revisit a number of the issues that we hope we can get put right. In terms of that positive engagement, I think the residents recognise that the consultation was done well, and in that, Chair, I must declare a personal interest that is a historic one in relation to this site, and if the members and the officers could record that, I would appreciate it. It's purely a personal interest in regard. I had a personal interest, no longer now current. In regard to this going forward, the highways issues under Chapel Hill are important, and the issues that we face, I think, with the conflict of cyclists being encouraged as part of the current proposals to dismount on one side of the road, cross over, and then continue through the underpass will be an issue of conflict with pedestrians, conflict with disabled users, because it is actually the only at-grade crossing and route through north-south for pedestrian disabled access. And that is an issue. If you think about the number of accesses north and south across our railway line, this one in particular is very significant. It does actually take the most, easily the most significant number of people north and south across the railway line. Therefore, that pathway and who uses it and how it's used is incredibly important. In terms of, prams and parents, if the issue with the Winklebury schools is just one example, how in the world are they going to get there? And so again, it just emphasises the importance of this pathway. We feel that conflict is significant and requires more investigation, and we would very much like to ask the committee this evening that if you were minded to approve this application, it is subject to further work undertaken to the satisfaction of local residents and ourselves as ward members working with you, hopefully as chair, and I know you've done this in the past as a committee, to achieve a satisfactory outcome that would be beneficial to all parties. And that includes Sentinel, because to be fair to Sentinel, they've worked with us throughout this process. In terms of the education side of things, that's a little bit more complicated. It is great, and to be fair to Sentinel, again, they're offering up safer routes here to Oakridge schools, as well as across to the Winklebury schools, because they have to. Because at the moment in time, the catchment area is the Winklebury schools, which, in all honesty, logically for this site, is daft. If you think about parents attempting to walk their children across the industrial estate, across the A30 ring road into Winklebury to access the junior schools and primary schools, let alone Fort Hill, it just doesn't add up. The Vine has capacity, our local schools in the area have capacity, and it also creates a division straight away. If we want this community to be holistic and to be together, then it should involve the community facilities and the whole infrastructure of our existing community. So we'd very much like to ask for you, perhaps if you would consider writing a letter of support with our officers to the County Council, encouraging them that if you are minded to approve this, you would like to see the catchment area changed, and you want to see the Oakridge and Vine as the local schools for this site. It is actually a piece of work that reflects on a lot of our other industrial sites coming forward for development. This is the first one. So if we don't capture it now, it will be something that will come up again, because a number of those sites have changes to catchment areas that will be required. So if the committee would be kind enough to consider that, as ward members, these are the two main concerns of residents that we'd really ask you to consider this evening, and we can carry on working on that as we head towards a reserved matters application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also just like to echo, and I know you didn't want us to repeat, but echo a big thank you to Sentinel for all the work they did and the commitment. I mean, we were very unhappy with the Lemon Land proposal as was, and this is a much better development on that site. and they've worked exceptionally hard with us and the community to get the best development we could on that site. And we have a significant increase in open space. I think the community are much happier that this isn't going to be a mixed-use development. And in relation to the layout of the flats and where the flats are now is an improvement, and there's a lot of work that's gone on in relation to where they've been positioned and how they're positioned on the site. I think also the keeping of the white building was very important to the community, and now we've got a really big piece of open space in front of the white building, so everybody will be able to benefit from that, which is wonderful. I'd like to pick up on what Paul was saying about employment land. You're going to see more sites come forward that are employment land, and this is an example. This is a very large site, one of the biggest I guess we're going to see. I think one of the biggest in the southeast for many years to come. But if you look across the road on Kingsclere Road, those children on that side of the road will go to the Vine and they will go to Oakridge schools, whereas any children on this side of the road, on the Kingsclere Road side, will be required as part of the catchment to go to Winkleberry. And I think that the Residents Association said it was 2.2 miles. I think if you actually walked it, it would be much further than that, and it's a very torturous and exceptionally dangerous route to take. And I think it's been picked up that in relation to sustainability, we need to think about the sustainability of this site, and it isn't just a little island. And if we want it to be part of Norden, we need to make sure it reflects that. In shaping this development, we had to look at housing need from Norden, and we had to look at open space, the needs of Norden in relation to open space. But then when it comes to educational needs, it's then reflected in Winkleberry, which is absolutely crazy. So I ask you to consider this, and maybe even to ask P&I, or the new committee, to look at this policy in relation to future sites and employment land and the whole issue of catchments. So I ask you to ask the committee for a future piece of work to look at what we do in relation to these sites. I also welcome, as Micah said, the consultation that took place. We've only had 4 objections to this site. And if you remember how many objections we had on the Lemon Light site, I mean, there has been a lot of work done, but like Paul says, we need to see improvements under that bridge. I urge you, please ensure that more work is done, and please write to county raising your concerns about the catchment of this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Chair. My question basically is to Paul. Currently, the access under the bridge is still with the old Lemon Land suggestion. And what is different between the Lemon Land suggestion and our current suggestion?
As I understand it, the Lemon Land application that was granted obviously had a highways element that was part of it, so that's the extant permission for under the bridge proposals. And if you remember at the time, we vociferously objected to them because of the same implication. That bridge is always going to be an issue, because how do you navigate as a pedestrian, as a disabled access, and as parents with prams and so on, under that bridge safely? I mean, it would be a good idea, in all honesty, to weight restrict the HGVs, because if you think about it, any extension or widening of that pathway brings those pedestrians into direct conflict with the centre line. And any HGV or bus that has to go through the centre line, it's got no choice. I mean, cars don't. Cars can pass between each other quite safely on both sides. But again, any attempt to bring pedestrians closer into conflict with traffic is not a good thing. The other issue just to raise would be the priority of that crossing. One of the issues with the previous Lemon Land application with the Winterthur Way crossing was that they were talking about giving priority to vehicles, not to pedestrians. Now that traffic light crossing there is one of the most important routes from the station, from the malls, out and then north, across and up through into Popley, into Norden, and right the way into the north of the town. So in that sense, you know, whatever treatment you do to that pathway has got to take into account north-south movements. Now, if you've got cyclists added to pedestrians and so on, it isn't creating a good recipe there at all for safety and safeguarding. And of course, you've got Victory Hill and Winterthur Way in terms of those massive developments with the number of people that live there and access those areas. So what I would suggest is, as I say, what we're asking for is let's have more time. If you are minded to approve this tonight, give us the opportunity as ward members working with you through your chair, with Sentinel and with Highways, to do some more work on this. It isn't fixed. It isn't working at the moment in any way that I think it should do. But isn't to say we can't work together to achieve something positively. And we want to be constructive here, but we have to reflect our residents' concerns about this.
Any more questions? Lovely. Thank you both very much. Right, members, questions to officers. Do we have any? Councillor Taylor. Followed by Councillor Potter.
Thank you. It's great to see that there seems to be general approval of the actual scheme itself, and there's been good engagement, but all of the concerns revolve around the catchment area and around the roads, which is why my question is directed to Mr. Shepherd, who the Hampshire man here. They're both Hampshire problems. Could you just comment on the suggestions made by the chair of the Southview Residents Association? He suggested, first of all, single file traffic controlled by lights. Secondly, to ban, and this is endorsed by Councillor Harvey, possibly banning HGVs. Is that possible? And thirdly, I can't picture it, but there is a storage area, I gather, under the bridge. Is there any chance of using that to widen the footway? You probably can't answer these straight away, but give us an idea of any possibilities.
With respect to the application as it's been submitted and the applicant's transport assessment, that's been assessed by my colleagues at the County Council, who, working with the applicant, have come to the scheme that's before us. I understand a number of options have been considered. I have to say that with respect to proposals for signals, it's beyond my area of expertise. However, given the relationship of those railway tunnels to Vine Road and the close proximity to the mini roundabout junction with Winterthur Way and Allison Link, I would have to question whether the potential for three-way traffic lights there would be practical. So that's not an option that I could give any positive comment on at the present time. With respect to the spare railway arch, my understanding is that because there are two railway bridges of different alignment, that unfortunately that doesn't provide a straightforward opportunity to be able to provide a link through to bypass the current tunnels. And with respect to the weight restriction, I can't see that deriving much benefit given the use of this route by the single and double decker buses as we currently have it. I have to say, having looked at the scheme that Hampshire are endorsing, it does provide benefits over and above what was tabled previously, principally in that it retains the use of the existing northern footway, that's unaffected, whereas previously that was proposed to be lost. Also, by virtue of the scheme, the carriageway width through the tunnel is narrowed to 5.5 metres, which provides an extra 400 millimetres as such to provide a pedestrian barrier to run parallel with the southern footway. So as a consequence of the proposals, we basically reduce the carriageway widths to encourage lower speeds, and we also provide some physical segregation between the users of the southern footway, thereby providing benefits over the current situation.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll just come in as well, just to add to Mr. Shepherd's comments, but also to pick up on the education query in terms of the catchment areas. I mean, I think Mr. Shepherd's obviously set out the position that the county have taken on the improvements under the railway bridge. I understand this is a second option as part of this application that was put forward. So the applicant have sort of considered some of the issues that have been raised and effectively agreed with the Highway Authority an approach for under the bridge, which has obviously led to the recommendation in the report for approval. And I think it's right that committee would consider that in the first instance as to whether that is an acceptable outcome or not. Having said that, if there is still concern, having considered the rest of the application in your debate around that one particular element, then I think there is an option for a way a resolution could be found to allow further work to continue on that prior to the actual completion of the 106 through delegation of the chair, etc. So I'll obviously leave that to your debate. But on the moving to the issue about the education that Councillor Taylor raised and has been raised in the issues around from the Southview Residents Association, I think the actual catchment areas are effectively a matter for the county's education authority. The issue insofar as planning is concerned is that we require an education contribution to be secured, which would be done in this instance through a Section 106 agreement. That contribution would normally not specify where the final expenditure of that would go, but that isn't part of the planning issue. That's part of the county's remit in terms of expenditure as education authority. So while I understand the issues and why they're being raised in this context, I don't think it's for the committee necessarily to have any influence over that, other than perhaps to write the letter as Councillor Harvey has suggested. The tie back into planning, I think, is probably where it comes to the safer routes to schools element, which has been set out in the report, and effectively the application tries to address both by saying, well, we understand that potentially in reality people from this site might go to Winklebury, but they also might go to Oakridge. So the highways improvements to be secured, as set out in the report, actually try to cover both scenarios.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Potter, followed by Councillor Frankham.
Mike has answered the points, the sort of scope that we may have, Chair, and I'll come back to the points I want to make, I think, in discussion, if I may, so I'll not pursue any matter now.
Excellent. Councillor Frankham.
Yes, I'd just like to ask the highways officer to comment on what was mentioned by several people tonight already, is the cyclists, and how viable would that be to ask cyclists to dismount. I do remember vividly when we went on the site visit when it was Lemon Land, and this is pretty much the same under there, that Councillor Leeks had almost a Mexican standoff, did you not? Because you couldn't pass by, and nothing seems to have been changed on this. Nothing seems to have been overcome this, and I really am concerned it will be mobility scooters. As Councillor Harvey said, this is the one way into town that is safe for disabled people, not just buggies, but myself, like a walking wounded. If I were able to walk that far, it certainly is more level there, and the curb levels are a lot better. I can see that really do need to look at something to do with the cyclists, and also my other concern, which would do with highways, is the minerals and waste aggregates, the lorries and that. Now I know there's going to be signage, but what can you do to ensure that these minerals and waste don't take this route as well?
The in-principle scheme that has been tabled with the application does include the provision of signage, etc., on the approaches to the tunnel to encourage cyclists to dismount on the southern widened facility. In the event that that signage was found to be ineffective, additional measures could be taken, for example, provision of bollards or staggered barriers to reinforce the beginnings and ends of the actual cycleway, but I would see that coming more once the facility had been provided when the operation of the facility was known. I have to say at the current time we've got 2 narrow footways with no facilities for cyclists whatsoever other than with the carriageway. At least with the proposal, that would have a defined facility on the south side for use by cyclists up until the tunnel, with the northern facility just remaining as it is. So to avoid conflict with cyclists, there would be the option to continue to use the northern footway, whereas with the southern footway outside of the tunnel, that's widened considerably to 3 metres over the 1.5 metre wide footway that's currently there. So looking at the scheme as a whole, there's a significant improvement on the room available for cyclists and pedestrians to coexist. But yes, due to the constrained nature of the bridge, there will be an element of cyclists and pedestrians having to negotiate their passage past each other when they go through the tunnel. With respect to large lorries, HGVs generated by the actual development site during construction, I would expect that to be the subject of the construction method statement. Minerals and waste.
I think the issue is probably around the Hampshire's mineral and waste plan, which allocates the sidings near the railway as a potential site. So, as detailed in the report, the main issue there is that has reached the allocation stage in the minerals and waste plan, but essentially it hasn't reached the application stage. This planning application obviously has. So, in effect, the minerals and waste application, should it come forward at some point in the future, would then have to take into account existing constraints and commitments, which would potentially include this site at that time. So I think it's more of an issue of timing, and effectively that application would then have to consider the impacts of this one, not vice versa.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just a bit concerned that you actually think that people will dismount from their cycles and get off, because I don't think they would, and I'm pleased that we're going to look at it. And also, can I say about the minerals and waste, when that came to county, I did oppose because of this build, and that's why I made the declaration before. But we are where we are now, and I will look at the application as is now.
Any more questions for the officers? Then let us go into debate. Does anybody? Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Chair. It's been raised tonight about the 2 main issues, and I fully support that. One of the key words that's spoken now within education and also within agencies is safeguarding. We need to safeguard our children. Now, I want you to picture the situation. If you were to stand in the centre of the proposed development and go to your right on the Sherburn Road, you've got 3/4 mile, a dead straight line to the school. No deviation, straight line. If you go to the top end of the development into Merton Road, again you've got a straight line right down to the junction with Sherburn Road. And the school's no more than about 200 yards farther on. A very safe route, a suit which I would encourage. And don't forget, you're talking about primary school children, little toddlers for the mum and dads. The alternative to that is Winklebury, a school somewhere over there, we're not quite sure where, twice as long as the distance. And I would challenge that. If we want to safeguard our children, then we should certainly go to Oakridge. And what about the current situation? There's some of the children who live in Kingsley Road go to Oakridge now. Their siblings would hope to go to Oakridge. I would support that. So, speaking about education, I think what's been suggested is just not practical. The safety of all traffic, pedestrians, cyclists and motorists. At the moment, I think the situation is that what we've suggested, I feel is not acceptable. I don't like the idea of pedestrians clashing with pedestrians clashing with cyclists, sorry. And I think David could endorse that because the situation he had when he last visited the site. I think they need to be kept separate. I don't know what the solution is, but I would like to be given a chance to further pursue it along with the various parties. And therefore I can't support this application tonight unless we agree to send some forms of means to the county. And luckily we've got some members of county council here tonight, and I'm sure they will pursue it as well. But I think from all aspects, from a Basingstoke point of view, we should have children going to Oakridge, and we should have something done to that bridge. It's been an eyesore and a problem for many, many years. And can I say to you, on more than one occasion, large vehicles have jammed under the bridge. And going back about 1954, if I can remember rightly, Les might remember, I don't know, actually one of the railway wagons came off of that bridge, and which caused a lot of damage then. So I cannot support this unless we agree that we could agree to the development, but refer the two issues to further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Frankham, followed by Councillor Potter, followed by Councillor Taylor.
Yes, obviously as a county councillor, I have been on to county, and they are looking at reviewing the catchment areas. So I think a letter from this committee will help to enforce that, and for them to realise. I am deeply concerned because there is history, and there was unfortunately a fatal accident of a young student who went from the north side to schools over in Winklebury, and I don't ever want to be reading the papers and seeing the really sad families that they were had. And I know that the county are very, very strong on safeguarding. So I think the idea to send out a letter in support is absolutely positively essential. But I do believe they are looking at it, but I do think we could help deeply by saying that we do concern, because we do have to work together, borough and county. Thank you.
Members, do we agree on sending a letter? I would, and we can do that. Yeah, good, it will be done. Next, Councillor Potter.
I mean, judging, I think, from what Councillor Taylor said some time ago, I mean, I think we're probably all broadly going to be saying the same things about this. I mean, as a preamble, I'd certainly say this scheme represents a vast improvement on what we had some time ago from Lemon Land, and there's an awful lot of work being done on this by a lot of people, and it's much improved. It's much that we could all support, but I think those two areas that everybody keeps referring to perhaps can be game stoppers unless we do something about it. And I think Mike Townsend has said, I mean, there is the prospect, I'm not talking about informatives, it's the other arrangement under which you, Chair, as the Chair of this committee, would work with local members and others to secure, I think, some new discussions around further changes in regard to the sort of highways layout that could, I think, lead to some changes which I think would be beneficial. I mean, my own subjective view, I mean, I travel this route very regularly, so do thousands of other people, by the way, but quite frankly, the status quo as it is probably the best answer, really, but we've juggled around in trying to find some convenient solution. But the idea of mixing cyclists and pedestrians and mobility scooters together is a recipe for conflict, I would have thought. I can't quite understand the logic of that with the best will in the world. And I think we need to just refine that rather more, and I think that can be done. So if you're willing to do your bit on that, Chair, I think that will work with officer support. In regard to the catchment areas, well, I mean, it's been said, I mean, it makes absolutely no sense, and I hope the county would see this, for us to have this arrangement under which this new development will actually be sending children to Winklebury, 2.5, 3 miles away, when we actually have the resource, and we have the, it seems to me, a sustainability arguments apply as well in regard to Norton, literally half a mile away. And we've got to get some logic into that discussion. And if the county is in the position of trying to look again at some of the catchment areas and allocation of resources, Councillor Frankham has said, hopefully we'll be pushing against a semi-open door in that regard. So a suitable letter written in the right way, I think, is appropriate in that regard. The last point I just want to make, if I may, and I'll finish, but I think it was made by Councillor Laura James, and it doesn't surprise you for me to latch onto that, but the issue of where we allocate large areas of what was hitherto employment land for residential purposes throws up a great number of issues in regard to resources. And this is a prime example, it seems to me. You know, hitherto it had been employment land. We would not have considered having, you know, nearly 600 houses with all the population that goes with that, all the traffic issues that go with that, all the education issues that go with that, other community provision, because it was employment land. Now, if we're going to do that, and we've done it here, and we're going to do it on a regular basis, I think that's something that we need to look at in policy terms to see whether we can refine the way resources are allocated, rather than saying we'll react to that once we've reallocated land under the local plan. And I think, you know, that is worth a reference to one of our policy committees. The P&I successor is exactly the committee for it to go to, I think. I'd like to see that go from this committee this evening, Chair, if we're able to find a formal words for that, please.
Sorry, if that's the motion, I'd like to second that.
Very good. We have a motion. Do we want it? All those in favour?
I mean, if I may, Chair, just to be, I mean, I'm recommending approval subject to, and if I didn't make that clear, I probably didn't really, but that's what I'd like to lead to eventually. But I know Councillor Taylor wants to speak, so I don't mean to cut across that, but that's where I'd like to lead to.
Chair, thank you. It's just in terms of clarification, the sort of motion and the vote just then, I assume was in relation to the referral to policy committee of the issue about employment land, etc., not the actual decision on the application per se. So I think that was what's being recorded now. Listening to members' debate in terms of the issue, as I understand, the sole sort of outstanding issue, if you like, in terms of the Chapel Hill railway bridge in itself. I think the way in which I understand the point Councillor Potter makes about not just being informative, but actually a kind of constructive process to move forward on that. I think the way to do that would be that or potential way would be for the committee to decide to resolve to grant planning permission subject to Section 106 agreement as usual, if that's what the committee decide to do. But prior to any decision being issued, i.e. prior to the planning permission being issued, that there be further discussion with the ward members and obviously their county council as highway authority, because it will require their agreement on other options or potential alternatives that could be considered first before planning permission is granted. If that led to some alterations to the scheme, bearing in mind that it's off-site highways works, it's not actually part of the planning application site itself, then I think it would be appropriate that could be delegated to the chairman. And to be agreed in accordance with the ward members as well. If, however, it gets to a point where the county and the ward members and the chair can't agree on the final scheme and the applicant can't provide a solution which effectively fits all, then it would have to come back to DC committee for final conclusion. So I think that would be the summation of how that resolution would work.
Councillor Frankham.
Yes, sorry, very shortly. It is my county division, so I'd like to be included as well, not just local ward members, please.
Yes. Right, members. Do you have any proposals?
Happy to propose, and I mean Mike's summation there was entirely appropriate. Thank you for that. And obviously the other supplementary comment that goes with it, I think, is also for an appropriately worded letter to go in the name of this DC committee to the county council about the catchment areas and the contradictions we see there in regard to where children from this site would be allocated, and for county to look at their allocation of resources again. So that's the other supplementary point as well, I think, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. We have a proposer and a second. Those in favour? Unanimous. Officers confirm, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the application would therefore be approved subject to the signing of a Section 106 agreement and the steps set out in terms of further consultation on the Chapel Hill bridge only in relation to other options to be explored with the local ward members, delegated to the chair in terms of any potential alternatives and potential to come back to DC committee if a workable solution cannot be found. It also includes the letter to Hampshire County Council regarding school catchment areas and the request for referral of the matter to the policy committee regarding the loss of employment land.
Right, we move to item number 2, which is Harwood, Paddock, Woolton Hill, Newbury. And I will ask, first of all, I've got speakers in the form of Parish Council Susan Cooper, in support Stuart Irvine, and the Ward Councillor, Councillor Sanders. And I will ask Lisa Soden to present.
Thank you, Chair. This is a reserved matters application for 49 dwellings, including landscaping, external appearance, layout and scale. An outline application for this number of dwellings was granted in November 2013, which established the principle of residential development on the site. Together with that, a 106 agreement was secured, which sets out provision of affordable housing, an area of open space, and some land for community use. So this application seeks the approval of the reserved matters pursuant to that outline permission, that is, the matters of detail. Members will note from the main report that the design and layout of the scheme has been amended in response to numerous comments throughout the course of the application from various consultees, and officers are now satisfied with the proposal. This reserved matters application sits alongside the outline application and, if approved, would need to be taken in conjunction with the requirements that were secured under that outline permission. There is no update in respect of this application, and the recommendation is therefore for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the main paper.
Thank you, Lisa. Right. Susan Cooper, please. Not coming? Stuart Irvine? Thank you. You have 4 minutes and I'll give you a warning when there's one left.
Thank you. Evening, councillors. My name is Stuart Irvine. I'm Office Director at Turley, who are the planning consultants acting on behalf of the developer Bloor Homes. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the scheme this evening. I don't want to duplicate the information you already have in what is a comprehensive officer's report, or indeed in the short briefing paper that we circulated and hopefully you will have had the opportunity to read, but felt that it was appropriate to assist you further on 2 specific areas that I think are mentioned in the committee report. Firstly, in relation to the design quality of the scheme, and secondly, to respond to some points raised against the proposals. Dealing with design quality in the first instance, it's Bloor Homes' intent to deliver a fantastic development here, which is valued both by its future occupiers and by the local community. Bloors have a strong track record and are well known for both their attention to detail and their desire to work with local communities to deliver a product that's respected. Harwood Paddock is an important location, and Bloors consider that through this proposal they'll be creating not only the right design for Woolton Hill, but also a scheme that they would value as one of their premier sites. In that regard, it's a significant site for Bloors as well as for the local area. In terms of the design elements of the scheme itself, the key characteristics are a low density development, a scheme at about 22 dwellings per hectare. This is a density that will allow for a spacious scheme. To give you a comparative, the scheme that you've just dealt with at Chapel Hill, the density at that scheme is proposed to be around about 55 dwellings per hectare. So it's significantly less, but obviously it is a significantly different site in character. And some of you may well remember the previous planning requirement of 30 dwellings per hectare as being a minimum. This again falls well below that. The scheme includes the provision of open space both to serve residents and to provide a green fringe to Tile Barn Row. The site has a dwelling mix that responds to the site, the needs of the market, and is in keeping with the character of the local area. The scheme will be delivered with a palette of high quality materials characteristic of the local area and used to deliver distinctive and diverse street scenes. The provision of a broad range of house designs and building designs chosen to create character and distinctiveness. Double width drives and garages, plus scope within the design and layout of the individual units for home working within the majority of the larger homes. This is a development that Blaw's will be proud to deliver as an appropriate high-quality response to what is an important site in Walton Hill. Moving on to the second topic, which was response to some of the comments made by others in respect to the scheme. I don't intend to say much on these points because they have been dealt with in the officer's report. Again, there's just two small points that I'd like to mention. Firstly, in relation to the comments on housing mix, the provision.
1 minute to go.
Thank you. The provision of 5, 2 and 3 bedroom open market units alongside the 7, 2 and 3 bed affordable units, which represents just under 25% of the units on the site, has been determined through the overall design of the scheme, taking account of a range of factors such as the character of the area, local demand, the desire for a low density scheme and the aspirations for larger family housing. This mix was essentially established at the outline stage, so it isn't new to the reserve matters stage. There have been some minor modifications which I think have been picked up in the report, but we consider that the mix is an appropriate response to the site. Finally, just in relation to the variations with the outline, these are minor. They are detailed in the committee report. This relates to small changes to sizes of units compared to what was suggested in the outline scheme. But we felt that those don't impact upon the acceptability of the scheme that's before you for determination. Thank you.
Brilliantly timed.
Just almost to the second.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Irvin? No? Right. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Sanders. You have 4 minutes and I'll give you a warning of 1.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I have no major comments to make at all on the application. I think it's been very well discussed locally and with the parish council, and most of the issues have been resolved. It should be a good development as far as we're concerned. I would just like to draw your attention to one condition which was imposed in the original outline consent, and that was that no development shall commence on site until a drainage strategy detailing any on or off-site works for both foul sewerage and surface water has been submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority. And the reason for this is that the local sewage system has a reputation, unfortunately, for being inadequate, flooding into the local nature reserve, killing thousands of fish. Thames Water have been fined on a number of occasions for failure to rectify this. It is important that the sewage works are brought up to scratch before we place the burden of another 40, 50 houses onto that system, which already can't cope with what it's got. That was the basis for that condition, that no development should start until there was a clear strategy and no dwellings could be occupied until the works have been carried out. This has been somewhat modified in the condition advocated for this under this current application, that Thames simply have requested a condition saying no discharge of foul water from the site should be accepted into the public system until the drainage works referred to in the impact study have been completed. Now, I have a copy of the impact study. There is no strategy in the impact study. It just outlines a range of options which might be carried out. And as we know, Thames are remarkably slippery at actually doing anything that they say they're supposed to do. I would therefore, even though I do understand that probably legally the conditions from the outline are carried over onto this application, I think for the complete avoidance of doubt and to reinforce the issue, I would like exactly the same condition 21 that was in the outline carried over to replace condition 15 of this application. And then that will, I think, give local residents the comfort that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for Councillor Sanders? No? Thank you, sir. Questions to officers? Do I have any? Debate? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it was only really just to clarify, I saw Mike making notes, obviously, when Councillor Sanders, but in regard to the repeat of that condition and you know, sort of further endorsement of it, really, I mean, that would be appropriate, would it not, really, within the position we find ourselves in now? I mean, if that is the case, then I'm very happy to, dare I say it, move to approval, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do I have seconded? Thank you. Those in favour? Yes, we're going to have an explanation.
Sorry, yes, condition 21, as set out on the outline, would still need to be met. Therefore, as officers, we don't consider it necessary to repeat on the reserved matters because the reserved matters approval would sit alongside the outline. So both conditions on both approvals, if you like, would need to be met. So that's the reason why we haven't taken that forward on this later reserved matters application.
Thank you. Right, we have a, are we happy with that undertaking? Good. Yeah, we have a proposer, we have a seconder. Those in favour of approval? Unanimous. Officers to confirm, please.
The application is approved as per the agenda.
Right, we now move to item 3, which is Oak Tree Farm, Upper Wick, St Marybourne, Andover. I have, in support of it, Mr Dan Shearman and the Ward Councillor, Councillor Faulkner, to speak, and the officer presenting, Lisa Sowden. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full application for the erection of a dwelling to replace an existing redundant agricultural building and the change of use of an agricultural building to form a residential store. Members will note from the main report that a previous planning permission for the conversion of this building to a dwelling, which is now proposed to be demolished, was granted by the committee in 2012. The applicant has since stated that the building is not structurally sound and needs to be completely rebuilt, and hence this application. The replacement dwelling will be sited in the same location and have the same appearance as that previously approved under the conversion permission. However, there's a fundamental shift in policy between converting buildings in the countryside and erecting new buildings in the countryside, which is what this current proposal effectively is. Officers consider it would not meet the strong tests of new dwellings in the countryside, and therefore the recommendation is for refusal for the reasons set out in the main report. Turning to the update paper, there's a small minor correction to the officer's report, which makes reference to information being submitted under the highway condition on that previously granted scheme, and also setting out that an email has been received from the applicant summarising a number of points that have been made within the committee report, and then the officer's comment to those.
Thank you, Lisa. Right, Mr Dan Sherman. You have 4 minutes and I'll give you 1 minute notice.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. The application relates to one previously passed by yourselves proposing a barn conversion to provide a suitable home for myself to continue my work on the family farm. After starting work on the site, we soon discovered multiple unforeseen problems, leaving no doubt the walls and the foundations were in a dangerous state. When excavating as necessary to underpin the walls, it was found the building was not built on chalk as expected. Also, the walls were not as stable as once believed. As found when breaking up the hard standing at the base of the walls ready for underpinning, the vibrations in doing so were making the walls even more unstable. The main problem being that the mortar used in the walls and the foundations wasn't mixed with enough cement, causing it to crumble prematurely. Also, the foundations have been packed with other objects such as flints when they were laid, something which is highly illegal in modern day building. Once dug under, the foundation crumbles, making it impossible to drill and install connecting rods safely. On the advice of the building inspector, we have stopped work in the interest of safety. I originally wanted to put in for an amendment to rebuild the walls in the original application. However, the case officer informed me that even though the outcome is effectively the same, a completely new application had to be made. As my only option on this, I have submitted a new application only to have it recommended for refusal on issues that were taken into account on the previous committee. when the application is to demolish and rebuild, creating the same dwelling as previously passed on the existing footprint, using the same materials, only the difference being that the dwelling will benefit from substantial foundations and walls, thus allowing for better insulation and damp proofing, and should last many more generations than the barn conversion would have. I have read the NPPF Section 6, and from my interpretation, this site should be classed as sustainable given the proximity of St Marybourne and Andover. Also, the rebuilding proposed transformations what is currently unsafe what is currently an unsafe wreck, of four walls back to its original beauty and can only enhance their location. If this is true, then the NPPF supports such a dwelling to cater for people like myself who have always lived in the community and wish to carry on living there. By building on my own land and rebuilding this redundant barn is the only way I can afford to live in the area when all other small local houses get bought and rebuilt into mansions by rich city folk. This has happened to the original farmhouse that went with this farm, and as before, I propose to build a quality, affordable two-bedroom home for me to start a family in. I'm also keen to apply a tie to the land in the dwelling so the house cannot be separated again, causing problems for future generations like myself.
1 minute to go.
I'm finished, thank you. So.
Right, any questions, members, to Mr Sherman? Councillor Councillor Bound, sorry.
The actual, your proposal, will it look very much like as was going to be?
Exactly the same. So.
Councillor Goodison.
I just want, can you just confirm what is painfully obvious, I think, to most of us, that as you're now required to define this as a new build, so much better foundations, etc., will be going in, and in essence, that the building that you're going to put up will look exactly the same in every respect to what's there at the moment, but it just will be a safer and a better build.
Yes, intended to look exactly the same as the drawings submitted were the same as on the previous application.
Good. Any other questions? No? Right, thank you, Mr Sherman.
Thank you.
Councillor Faulkner. You have 4 minutes, Councillor, and I'll give you 1 minute's notice.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. I and my fellow Councillor, Councillor John Isaac, support the application and ask the committee to approve this application as it did the previous application in 2012. We disagree with the grounds for refusal. The site is secluded, it is not isolated. If you set off from these civic offices through Overton, Whitchurch and then to St Marybourne and on to Upper Wick, after 16 miles you may feel isolated. But if you carry on up the hill, you will see that Andover is just 3 miles away. With its population of 60,000, the head office of Test Valley Borough Council, and indeed the headquarters of the British Army. So I would submit this is not isolated. And this is precisely the journey that some of you on the previous committee did in 2012 when you visited the site. It cannot be unsustainable when there are other dwellings within 50 metres, when the necessary services are available, and again when Andover and the other villages are close to hand. The site is accessed by a public highway, and the road is no different to the roads which link St Marybourne, Binley, Egbury, Crux, Easton, etc., etc. As regards adding to infrastructure and community needs, this is just a single 2-bedroom dwelling. Far from adding to such needs, there is likely to be a reduction in car movements and for the need for farm vehicles to travel up from St Marybourne. As regards policy, car dependency The reality is that the whole of our wards of Burghclere, Highclere and St Mary Bourne, and indeed the other rural wards, are dependent upon cars. And are we to ban all developments in these rural wards? In this case, with the applicant living on the farm, car journeys overall should decrease. Now, policy on affordable housing. We as a council are way behind our target. And although this is just a single 2-bed dwelling, we can send a message that Basingstoke and Dean is serious about affordable housing, and no, we do not just approve 5-bedroom mansions in our rural countryside. This is a brownfield site, although in an area of outstanding natural beauty. This dwelling will be on what is now a derelict site, which is surrounded by a farmyard, most of which is concrete. This can only be a significant improvement to the environment. And on a final note, here is a young man from a local farming family who has been caught up by misfortune in trying to convert a redundant building, and now finds himself immersed in the sophistries of various planning regulations and policies.
1 minute.
Which in this case, to the ordinary person, seems slightly illogical. I believe we have an opportunity to do the sensible thing and show that we care about our local communities, about affordable housing, and we would urge you to consider the approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have any questions for Councillor Faulkner? No? Thank you. Questions to officers? Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on page 92 of 148, I just think we're caught in a definition here. I just need some help, please. In the middle of the page there, we talk about this proposal for a new build dwelling rather than a replacement or conversion of an existing building. We've heard the conversion of the existing building, it sort of fell down. So it's a replacement dwelling, which is going to look like the one that we allowed permission. But we're now saying it's a new build. I'm very confused. Could you help me, please?
Yeah, the previous permission related to the conversion of the existing building, that's no longer there. So that permission has in effect fallen away. So there is nothing to replace. So it's a new build in the countryside. It's not a replacement dwelling because there is no dwelling to replace. So you can't use that criteria, set it against that criteria under that policy.
Any more questions? No? Debate? Councillor Goodison.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I do accept that what the borough officer stated, that you know this does need to be defined, you know, as a new build. However, I think Councillor Faulkner spoke very well and very logically. I was very impressed by the reasons he put forward as to why we should consider approving this application, and bearing in mind that the building, if approved, is going to be on precisely and exactly the same footprint, is going to look precisely and exactly the same as the application which we passed last year. Under those circumstances, I feel that common sense should dictate that we should approve this one. While not wishing to in any way curtail discussion, I'm happy to move approval.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Looking at the sort of nods around the place, I think I'm inclined just to second that. I think I would appreciate that the officers have got to operate in the realms of the rules, but I think we can operate in the realm of common sense as well. And I just think it seems ridiculous that we can't just give the okay to this one, which is going to look exactly the same, be on the same site, on the same footprint, and is to all intents and purposes the reuse of a building. So I would second approval.
Thank you. Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Well, just adding to that possibly logic might play some part in this. If we approve this, we're also
therefore expecting a 106 or SIL regulation fee to be put on something which wasn't there the first time? It was there the first time. Right, thank you very much. Okay, I'll withdraw that. Thank you.
Do we have reasons for approval?
I don't see why we couldn't just, oh, sorry. As the one who seconded it, I personally don't see why we couldn't just say that to all intents and purposes, it is the reuse of a building in the countryside.
Councillor Potter.
I mean, I know, you know, we get criticised on occasions, but it just seems to me some common sense should apply, really. I mean, I know we're a regulatory committee and we're banned by the NPPF and reminded of this consistently, but what a ludicrous situation. I mean, in 12 months' time, 18 months' time, when this is built, I don't imagine anybody's going to come along and say, oh, what a lovely building you've got there, but you approved it under the wrong policy. I mean, it's ridiculous, really, and it just seems to me, on occasions, logic should take precedence, and the precedence here is that, in good faith, the applicant has made a very honest statement, I think, about the situation he's faced. We had this debate some time ago about, you know, all of the reasons why this residential building was required in the place that it was, and we all supported that. We now find that this, you know, has all sorts of structural problems and the like. The logic is it's the same footprint, it will look exactly the same, and to apply any other criteria to stop that happening just seems to me to be a nonsense. And I think we should just say that we are content with the fact that it's a minor variation on what was approved originally.
Yeah, officers are going to help us with some reasons.
I don't think you could say that the existing building's being reused, because you know, it's quite clear from all the papers before us that it's not going to be. But you could say that you've given weight to that previous permission, and to all intents and purposes it is in effect, you know, that you've used that as material consideration in reaching your decision as an exception to the usual restrictive policies.
Councillor Goodison.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I could also comment that although in our pre-submission local plan, which I accept is not you know, not yet been passed by the inspector, I mean they are much more friendly here. Policy SS6 is much more friendly towards the possibility of making exceptions in the countryside, and exception E does say residential proposals that have the support of the local parish council, provided that they do not result in an isolated form of development, the scale is appropriate to the site and location, the development will respect the local environment and amenities of neighbouring properties, and the development is well related to the existing settlement. I would have thought that exception basically sufficiently covers us, allows us to exercise a bit of common sense in this question, while accepting that at the moment it's only in the pre-submission local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the point Councillor Gosens is raising. I think the issue is obviously the weight that we can attach to the emerging local plan is minimal at this time. And I do think if listening to the debate and the discussion that members have had, the suggested reason for approval that Ms Southern has raised in terms of putting weight on the material consideration of the previous plan permission would be the right way to capture that. As part of the reasoning as an exception to normal policy. Just to be clear, there is no longer any referral process to P&I as was since changes to the Constitution.
Shall we vote? Those in favour of approval of the thing? Carried unanimously. Officers, to do conditions, please.
Can I just clarify that the recommendation is for approval subject to the completion of a 106 agreement, as per the previous clauses that were made in relation to the earlier application. Secondly, there were a number of conditions attached to that earlier permission, and can I take it that members would want similar conditions to be added to this approval?
Please, all done? Good. Right, we move on to item number 4, Thimble Cottage, Church Street, Upton Gray. And for this I have Mr. Ebbs in support. But first of all, Rachel White to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is an application for retention of development at Thimble Cottage, Church Street, Upton Gray. The application relates to the extension of the residential planning unit known as Thimble Cottage, which has been subject to a previous consent for a certificate of lawfulness, to provide an enlarged dwelling through the conversion of the garage, store and workshop with associated curtilage, following subdivision of land at Willow Cottage, and the erection of gates, fences and a bike store. There's a complex history to this site which is detailed in the main paper. I would also draw members' attention to the update, which notes that 2 letters of support and 1 petition bearing 6 signatures, also in support, have been received since the completion of the officer's report.
Thank you for that. Mr. Ebbs, you have 4 minutes and I'll give you a warning of the final one. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the opportunity to speak this evening. As you can see, the application is recommended for approval by the officer, and there's no people objecting here this evening. I'd just like to clarify, partly to clear my name on this really, is actually that we did get everything confirmed in writing from the council before we done the works. Although it's a retrospective application, we've had a letter sent to us in July 2010 that we could do the works. It wasn't something we'd done willy-nilly. I have a copy of the letter this evening. The copy is on our application. This wasn't a letter without prejudice from the council. This was a letter that was confirmed by your own legal department. We also, before we'd done that, we also sought our own legal advice, and everybody was in agreement that we'd done it. And hence, when the enforcement happened, when your outside barrister looked at the case, that's, I believe, why the council paid out over £20,000 to me and my neighbours for our legal fees and professional fees to cover the costs. That was without going to court. That was just something the council just paid with withdrawing enforcement. As you'd be aware, that it's been going on for 4 years, and I don't think I'd really like to say anymore, just that I'm just trying to clear my own name on it, really. There was the fence, gate, and bike stall did require planning permission, which we were always in agreement with, and we did say we would remove that. But this has been recommended for approval under this application anyway. So on that note, I'd just like to say I hope you follow the officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ebbs. Any questions, members? No? Thank you, Mr. Ebbs. Oh, you have? No. Right?
He's waiting for debate.
Yeah, right, okay. You can go and sit down, Mr. Ebbs. No, thank you. Councillor Goodison.
Are we open for debate? Are we doing questions?
Questions to officers first.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there.
Yeah. Questions to officers? None. We are open to debate. Councillor Goodison.
Thank you. Well, I'm quite satisfied that the reasons given by the officers for recommending approval are reasonable, valid and sensible, and on that basis I'd like to recommend approval. Thank you.
Councillor Leeks, and my apologies for...
That's all right. I was just going to virtually say the same as Councillor Goodison, so I'll go second it.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
I was going to second it, but that's all, Chairman. Thank you. Nothing to say. Thank you.
Right. Can we move to a vote then? Those for approval? Unanimous. Thank you. Will officers... Rachel, will you start?
Thank you, Chair. The application is approved subject to the conditions as set out in the main paper.
Thank you. We move on to item number 5, 16 Hawkley Drive, Tadley. and I have to speak Mr. and Mrs. Gibbons as objectors, and in support Mr. and Mrs. Fuel. And Peter Tanner to present. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the erection of a two-storey rear extension and alterations including the raising of the existing garage roof and insertion of eave dormer windows to the front. There is no update to report for this application other than the notes from the site viewing panel. The application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions as listed within the main agenda paper.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Gibbons. You have 4 minutes between you, and I'll give you a minute's notice before the end.
Thank you, Chair. My wife and I have lived in Tadley for close to 10 years. We've been married here, have 2 young children aged 5 and 2, and we're moving to 15 Hawkley Drive on September the 11th to improve the quality of our family's life. Unfortunately, we recently discovered this planning application for the extension that we believe will significantly impact our dream for the perfect family home. We love the community in Tadley, and the primary school our son Oliver goes to is excellent. And my wife looks after friends' children from school regularly. We're moving here as it light and airy for children to play and eat outside, with a south-facing garden and no overlooking. The seller and searches we carried out never mentioned the proposed extension. It would appear the plan application was submitted directly after our surveys were completed. We were not informed about it. I mean, they found out by chance and just made a deadline for objection. We're spending well over £400,000 on a property. It could have some of the sale points ruined from our point of view, and have an additional stress and inconvenience from building works with little warning that this was going to happen. We can't back out of the sale, nor have we time to obtain professional planning advice. And we don't really think this is particularly fair. We have some points of objection that we'd like to go over. Firstly, we feel the extension is too close and overbearing. The first floor will be 4 metres directly above the patio, be less than a metre from our boundary, and would overlook the only area of garden that may still receive sun and reduce privacy. This will impact the enjoyment of our family garden immensely. To quote the planning report regarding the first floor window, it is acknowledged that this window would result in additional views into the rear garden of the adjoining neighbouring property to the north. Secondly, Tadley Ward Councillor Musson, seconded by Councillor Leeks, are on record as stating that the houses are close together and have little room for additional development without impacting neighbours' amenities. I believe that this will set a precedent, and others in the road will also follow suit if this goes ahead. We note a previous application, BDB 45069 to 31A Hawkley Drive, was refused on similar grounds and the potential effect of increased traffic to an already optimally developed street. Additionally, the planning report admits it is acknowledged that the proposed development would result in a level of harm to the amenities of the neighbouring properties, in particular the adjoining neighbour to the north, and we would strongly agree with these comments. Thirdly, according to the planning report, there would be an impact upon the adjoining neighbour in terms of an overbearing effect and result in an imminent loss of light. The extension will extend close to 4 metres past the rear of our house and will significantly reduce direct light from 10 AM to 2 PM from the south-facing direction to the patio, clothesline, dining room and lawn. And I can assure you that living less than a metre from the proposed works in our circumstances, you would find it significant. Finally, the plans are vague, as Tadley Town Council and Councillor Musson have mentioned from consultations. Plans are not very clear. Many measurements missing from the plans, and so it's difficult to ascertain exact dimensions in relation to number 15. In particular, the first floor extension that will impact us the most, so the real impact on my family is unknown. Parking provisions for number 16 are vague, as the planning report clearly states. The resultant garage would fall below the required internal dimensions of a double garage. It is not clear how much garage space will be left within the garage from the plans. There are no assurances that this will not be reduced further. The plans do not appear to have an approved landscaping scheme that considers the eventuality of removal of small trees and deposition of soil from excavations and difference in height of the fence line. There could be some longer term soil movement and water runoff issues not considered to the detriment of our garden, as it's a clay soil area. The plans do not mention the proximity of the extension to the rear boundary. In conclusion, I thank Councillors Musson and Leeks for their invaluable support at this difficult time that aided our investigations. We're disappointed with the plans and the planning officer's conflicting report that is vague, ignores issues affecting our family home and attempts to sideline our concerns. Designs are unclear and could impact us more than is currently understood. And additionally, this comes at a time when, as a family, we're least equipped to respond. Therefore, the planning outcome leaves a bitter taste.
Thank you. Questions from Mr. Gibbons? Councillor Leeks.
Wondering if it could go back to the photo of the garden, but it wasn't that one. That's the one. Can I just query, that was taken from number 16, isn't it? And overlooking to your proposed house, which is the White House, is that correct?
Can we go back one?
Sorry, is that one advanced?
I believe it is. Yeah, it looks different colour on the walls. So
That's
we'll
our
paint, yeah,
house.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's just a contrast, I suppose. Yep, that's correct.
Sorry, once you're around, can you go back to the other? Can I ask, oh, so is that on my plans I've got in front of me, it doesn't actually show another piece coming out from your proposed house, that bit there, underneath the third window. So is that an extension coming out?
I believe that's an extension, yes.
Thank you. And the other thing is, I need to clarify something. I haven't actually passed any comment on whether I agree it or not agree it. Councillor Musson has been dealing with this. Okay?
Yep, correct. Yeah, no problem.
I haven't actually supported you in any way, only that otherwise you don't.
Thank you. Any more questions from Mr. Gibbons? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Gibbons.
Thank you.
Next, please, Mr. and Mrs. Fuel. Mr. Fuel, you have 4 minutes, and I'll give you a warning of 1.
Actually, I am Paul Chapman, and I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Fuel. I'm the agent and the architect on this application. First of all, I would like to start off by saying that on consultation that I had with Mr. and Mrs. Fuel, initially we were unsure of the application that they wanted to make, whether it would require planning permission or not. So I made an appointment to go and see the duty planning officer and put before them what plans we had, and it was quite clear that really we were very, very close to being under permitted development, apart from one small area of the eaves level which we concluded would need a planning application. So I went back to Mr. and Mrs. Fuel. We had several discussions, we played around with different things. Although you'll notice the ridgeline has been raised, but what we've done is formed a barn hip end on the end of that building, which then actually reduces the amount of wall that's seen from the neighbour's garden. I can honestly say that throughout all of our consultation, that Mr. and Mrs. Fuel were very mindful of making little impact on the neighbour as possible, but still being able to achieve what they needed to achieve. The reason for their extension is they have a very, very small utility room and breakfast room, not really fit for purpose as it is, so that it needs extending, and at the same time making addition of a hobby room and also additional space for elderly relatives when they come to stay. As far as the car parking is concerned, there are sufficient spaces. There's 5 parking spaces, 2 cars already are parked in the garage and 8 bicycles, and it will actually make slightly more room in the garage when the development is done, because at the moment they do have fridges, freezers and things in the garage because the utility room is so very small. So as I say, very much consideration was made of the neighbour when the application was done. I'd like to come to the point of the privacy. Unfortunately, the privacy of the buildings was compromised greatly in around 2006, when the neighbour concerned built a new living accommodation with a window facing across Mr. and Mrs. Fuel's property. There is a very large window that faces in that direction, and maybe well be one of the reasons for the observations that there are. This compromised the privacy very much because from that window you can actually look straight into, which we see on the screen now, you can actually look straight into the upstairs bedroom windows of my client's house. And in fact, the building of the new extension will completely eliminate that from the upstairs bedroom windows. And in fact, the privacy of the garden for the neighbour will also be improved, because as the building goes back, there will be portions of the garden that won't be able to be seen from the property. So just a few other points I'd like to make, and that's with work being carried on, which I think is a concern, but it is a minimal amount that would happen in any of these situations, and no more than comings of goings of vehicles that would be in the street. All health and safety would be adhered to at all times, so I don't really see that would be an issue. Now, just to sum up then, really, again, my client has at all times considered the neighbour. Timing of things, how they happened, is nothing to do with my client whatsoever. That may be to do with people saying the property, I'm really not sure. If unfortunately we tried to change this building, I think Peter Tanner, the councillor, has made some good recommendations, and I hope that the council will go along with these ideas. And I think anything else that we may try to do with it would be detrimental if we were to try and change roof slopes and various different things to accommodate.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Now, members, any questions to Mr. Chapman? No? Oh yes, there is. Councillor Leeks.
This might seem a funny question. Is this a sort of extension that you'd be carrying out yourself?
Yes, it is.
As an important player, because I've seen your work in the past, and it has been good, and I know that you're quite good towards other people in the area. That's all I was going to say.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Now, members, questions to officers? Do we have any? Councillor Leeks?
So, if this was reduced in the height by 400, dare I say, just under half a metre, it wouldn't need planning permission, is that correct?
Just looking at my report then, it's yes, that is correct in terms of the eaves height. Just noting with regards to the permitted development legislation, Class A states with regards to full two-storey extensions that actually the most depth would be 3 metres. Therefore, obviously, looking at this proposal, technically it would also fall outside by 0.4 metres in terms of the overall depth. Apologies, that wasn't covered in my report also, but therefore, technically, if they reduced the overall depth by 0.4 metres and reduced the eaves height by 0.4 metres, then yes, that would form under permitted development.
Councillor Bound?
Reference to the plan, that one there. I don't quite understand it. It seemed, I mean, Councillor Leeks pointed it out, that there was an extension to number 15, which doesn't appear on this plan. Because there was reference to a window that was overlooking. Well, it doesn't make any sense according to the plan.
With regards to the ordnance survey map, obviously they're updated separately to ours, and obviously the applicants with this application would ensure that their own plan, so for example their block plan and the scale of their extension is obviously accurate, and it's not necessarily for them to obviously include additional features of other properties. So it may just be a case that it's not been updated in the past from the ordnance survey.
It's just that when windows are referred to as overlooking or looking into somebody's bedroom, and it's not obvious where that can happen from.
Any more questions? Councillor Tomlin.
Sorry, on that extension, is that a double storey or single storey?
Just single storey.
Any more? Right. Debate. Board member? Sorry.
I don't know. I might as well be honest. I mean, I've come along thinking tonight when I looked at the plans. I didn't realise, that the extension next door was such, and that was, was obviously causing an overlook from that side. I cannot support refusal, but therefore I'm not supporting approval, so I'll leave that to somebody else to say. Sorry.
Councillor Tomlin. Sorry, Councillor Goodison. Councillor Goodison.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just wanted to make the point that I was able to go on the viewing panel, and we did go into the garden of number 15, and I would just make the point that if you look at the side elevation on the plans here, it's worth mentioning to those who were not able to go on the viewing panel that the windows, the upstairs and downstairs windows, which you see on the side elevation, they face directly onto the side of number 15. The extension only has one window in it, and that's facing out over the garden of number 16, and in my view does not overlook the garden of number 15. There are no new windows which could be said to be overlooking the garden of number 15. Thank you.
Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some reservations, simply from a bulk perspective. I mean, looking at the orientation, as I understand it, this particular extension surely must reduce light into the garden of next door, because it's on the south side of the garden, and it's going to be 2 stories and quite high. So the bulk side of it just seems rather large for the plot, and I haven't noticed there wasn't in the consideration in the officer's report, but when we saw the view of the fronts of the properties, would almost say terracing. I don't know whether we can see that front picture, but it's quite a large front extension over there. I mean, you've got obviously the garage and its ridgeline, but bringing the line forward, I've often seen that, and given next door, 2 doors up, that seems very solid wall. So I've got reservations about bulk terracing and shadowing, so I'm a little undecided as well. So I'll see what others make of that one.
Councillor Potter.
I didn't go on the viewing, so perhaps you'll indulge me just in terms of some limited understanding, but certainly from what I've seen, what I've read. But I mean, this is a fairly, these are fairly large dwellings, fairly high density, I think, and relatively small plots when you look at it. And I think that picture probably bears some support for that, really, in itself. I mean, stating the obvious, but I mean, these things are always the most difficult. We come up against it all the time, where one neighbour wants to do an extension which suits their needs, and it impacts inevitably upon the next door neighbours. But I think it probably is worth saying, isn't it, in regard to the rules that apply in respect to permitted development, I mean, were this to be reduced simply by about 18 inches, I mean, that's the sort of amount we're talking about. This would be permitted development, and the impact on next door would only be marginally reduced by that. Which could be done, I guess, really. I mean, if it fails in this regard, it can be done under some modified arrangement. That's the reality of it. And to be frank, I think that would be dishonest and disingenuous in a sense for that to be the outcome of this, really. I mean, my subjective view, and it is purely on the basis of what I've read and what I've seen, is that this is an acceptable extension to the dwelling in question. I realise it will impact in marginal ways upon the next door neighbour, and I regret the fact they were not advised about this in their original searches. I mean, that may be a matter that they take up elsewhere, but I think the timing of it probably was something that they alluded to anyway. That apart, I think it should be approved as per the officer's recommendation.
Is that a proposal? Thank you. Seconded. Right. Those in favour of approval? Those against? Those abstaining? Sorry, the motion is carried. Would Officer wind up, please?
The application is approved subject to the conditions in the main report paper.
We move on to item number 6, Waterman's Cottage, Hannington. And to speak, we have objector Mr. Pointer Smith, and in support Mr. Paul Burnett, and Peter Tanner will present for the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the erection of a first floor side extension over the existing integral garage, a single story side extension to form a new garage, and the conversion of the existing garage integral to the existing garage to habitable space. There is no update to report. The application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions as listed within the main agenda paper.
Thank you, Mr. Pointer Smith. You have 4 minutes, and I'll give you warning of 1 minute at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As most of you will know, I'm sure, Hannington is a conservation area, and the conservation area appraisal originally noted that there were notable views within the village, and the original planning permission for the 5 properties on this area concerned was only granted after much debate, as the original application was for a much more dominating development. Rose Cottage, where I live, has been there 200 years or so. It's immediately across the road from Waterman's Cottage, and any description of the village always mentions it as a focal point because it's on the outside of a slight curve in the road. The original planning permission for Waterman's Cottage recognised these points, and so the present design was arrived at, and the height and bulk were restricted to avoid dominating either Rose Cottage or the aspect from the village green. Other properties around the green are non-dominating even when they are large. Present design has, I believe, been well accepted by the vast majority of residents. However, the proposed roof line significantly increases the visible bulk and reduces the sky visible from Rose Cottage and hence reduces the natural light. This problem could be avoided by a modified roof line on the extension that's been proposed. In addition, the existing Waterman's Cottage has, in the face towards Rose Cottage, one very small stairwell window, i.e. not in a habitable room. The proposed design shows one much larger window in a bedroom, i.e. a habitable room, which looks directly into the Rose Cottage bedroom windows and overlooks all the front living area windows. For these reasons, I believe the proposed design is not reasonable and should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pointer Smith. Any questions for Mr. Pointer Smith, members? No. Yes, Councillor Potter.
Hello. I mean, I know I should be able to work this out in terms of the scale, but in terms of your property, Rose Cottage, as against Waterman's Cottage, what's the distance between the two, would you judge?
Well, our front verge, that is Rose Cottage that's on the screen now, our front verge at the front door is perhaps 6 or 8 feet. The road is reasonably narrow, perhaps 16 feet, maybe less. And then just to the right of that picture is the edge of Waterman's Cottage. The extension will come out, there you can see, excuse me, the existing garage, you can see there, that will become part of the living accommodation, and a garage to the left will be built. So that wall will be closer by perhaps 12 feet, 10 feet, I don't know.
Just to confirm the point, I mean, there is, the boundary hedge that we see.
Yes.
That remains, and that's pretty substantial, isn't it?
Yes.
What's that, about 7 foot high or something, is it?
Depends if you include that verge.
Slope verge.
On top of the verge, it's about 4 to 5 feet, I would think.
Okay.
Councillor Potter, the proposed extensions will be located approximately 11 metres from the front elevation of Rose Cottage. On page 121 of 148, midway down and under Rose Cottage.
well, my apologies to all, having not read that well enough then, but thank you for that, and that confirms the information properly. Thank you.
And you can see in that picture the small window that's existing, set into the roof.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Pointer-Smith? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Pointer-Smith. Could you switch off the machine? Mr. Daniel Stent? No? Paul Burnett, yes. You will have 4 minutes and we will notify you of the final one.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors. So thank you for letting me speak this evening. I'm here in regards to the minor extension of Waterman's Cottage. I'd like to keep this brief and really touch on why we've applied for this extension and also the process that we've gone through. So we've lived in the village of Hannington for over 3 years now, and we're very active members of the village community, contributing to many village events and activities, and we've gained many friends in the village whilst living there. And we want to ultimately stay living in the village for many years ahead, but there is a housing mix issue in terms of the size of the next house available to move into if we were to move within the village. Our family and work lives are based around the village, and we plan to continue to contribute to the area. My wife and I have recently had a baby that's now 8 months old, and that means that we would like to expand the living space to help accommodate a growing family, as we have plans to increase our family, and also accommodate our in-laws when they come to visit. Combined with the lack of alternative housing being available in the area and the space that we have on our plot, it would make logical sense for us to expand the current property with a minor extension of our living space. So the process that we followed to try and achieve this, we've visited planning to discuss how we could comply with planning policy and extend our existing space. And we also sought feedback from our neighbours to try and achieve the most positive design with as little impact on our neighbours in the village as a whole as possible. As a result of some of that feedback, we actually changed some elements of the design before we submitted it for planning. So the plans were submitted with all of the feedback and guidance provided, and we plan to complete this build using the continuation of the materials that are existing, so there's no changes to the appearance of the property. And we've worked hard with the neighbour and the villagers to try and agree an optimal proposal and maintain a sympathetic, consistent and symmetrical design, because as you'll hear later, we're also trying to do this as a proposal in conjunction with our neighbour to maintain the symmetry of the design. And ultimately, if this proposal is approved, it will enable us to stay in the village that we've grown to love and help the village to grow and flourish from within. Also, I'd like the council to consider that the majority of the village has come out in support of this application, but we're obviously mindful that we kept this as sympathetic as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for Mr. Burnett? I have one. Mr. Pointer-Smith mentioned a slight reduction in the roof, I think, in the height. Would that be possible to do for both sides?
In terms of whether that's possible, any further reduction of the roof height on the left-hand side of the proposal would impact the headspace within. And when I talked about discussing that with the neighbour, we discussed the roof line with Mr. Pointer-Smith before we submitted the plans, and the hip on the end of the design was a result of that discussion. So the original plans would not have included the hip.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Questions to officers? Do we have any? In that case, debate. Do we have any comments or proposals? Councillor Taylor.
I wasn't, oh, we didn't have a viewing, so it doesn't matter that I wasn't on it. Looking at both the diagram and at the pictures, the photographs of this house, it looks to me as if it's on a sizable plot with plenty of space to the side. And the proposal to me looks like quite a modest one and quite sympathetic as well. And it's one of those cases where I really don't see any good reason to turn it down. It seems to fit in well with the style and with the plot size, and it certainly doesn't seem that it's going to overlook any houses considerably. So I would certainly be sympathetic towards this one.
Councillor Potter.
I mean, Councillor Taylor's preamble is exactly as mine would have been. I think this is very empathetic in regard to the current building. I think it's been carefully done, and I think the officer's report makes, comments about that. I think in terms of scale and proportion, it's entirely appropriate. I'm sorry that there are those who obviously don't find it as attractive as I do, but I'd certainly want to support it. I'd certainly propose approval, Chair.
Right, so any other comments before we have a proposal and a seconder? Those in favour of approval? Carried, thank you. Officer, sum up, please.
The application is approved subject to the conditions in the main report.
We move on to Ash Tree Cottage, Hannington now, and I have speakers in the form of Mr. Wythe objecting and in support Mr. Stent. And Peter Tanner, please to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the erection of a first floor side extension over the existing integral garage, a single storey side extension to form a new garage, and the conversion of the existing integral garage to habitable space. There is no update to report within this, and the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions in the main agenda paper.
Right. Mr. Wythe, please. You have 4 minutes, and
Sorry.
I'll give you a warning of 1.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, my name is Roger Wythe, and I'm the owner of Crispin's Mead, which is to the, I could get it the right way round, it's to the south of Ash Tree. And if I just give you some context for this, this property was lived in by my brother, and he died in December, and therefore the ownership of the property comes to myself and my other brother. Before that, we owned it together. So we are selling it, but I speak because this sale that we have has not progressed in 3 months, and therefore, regretfully, I have to speak in objection to this proposal. And I have raised several issues in my letter, but I particularly just want to speak about the impact on Crispin's Mead. And the grounds on which I wish to object are on the basis of the overshadowing and also the bulk of the of that development that is being proposed. Just to give you a little bit of context, this as referred to before, the development of this whole site in 2002, which was owned by cousins of mine, was very carefully thought through. And the selection of those semi-detached cottages, which in themselves are quite large dwellings, was very carefully thought out, both for its impact on the green, to avoid any negative impact. And it was a good quality design from Thames Vale. The impact on Crispin's Mead has been to obviously surround it a very modest 60s bungalow surrounded now by executive homes. And it has been further closed in by developments to the south of the bungalow as well. So the approval of the external double garage in early of this year we objected to that as well, because that would have meant seeing the end elevation of a double garage right in front of our front door, of just about, I think it was about 10 yards away from us, but it would have created a big bulk. That unfortunately went through, and as I see it, it's still possible that that could be built even with this existing development. So the reason for objecting, the reason for objecting is the bulk of this and the impact that it has on our dwelling, that it does affect our view of the centre of the village. We cannot actually see the green because it's obscured by hedging and some trees, but it does still give us a reasonable light into the property. If this goes ahead, then that view is much more restricted. As you come from our door, you have the bulk of Ash Tree Cottage, and we do see its bulk, and that bulk will become nearer to us. So that is the reason for my objection, apart from the other matters mentioned in the letter. I do wonder whether, if the development has to go ahead, whether there could not be a lower level scheme, so it would have less of an impact on that dwelling as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Councillor Leeks?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just to clarify something. I mean, to me that looks like the entrance to Crispin's Mead there to the right. But is it the other side of that fence?
No, the entrance to Crispin's Mead is to the right of that picture.
So it's the other...
It's there on that right hand side.
Right, okay.
You can't see it there, but
No,
it's just to the right of that picture.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all.
Councillor Bound.
Is the bulk of your objection because it combines with this garage that got permission previously?
That is one of the possibilities that we are very concerned about, and obviously we were encouraged, we were originally told that a condition could be attached. If this goes ahead, then that garage could not possibly go ahead, because there is still space for that to be built. That was our real concern. But it's also because of what we see as a bulky view, and that bulk is coming nearer towards us.
Any more questions for Mr. Wyatt? Yes, Councillor Potter.
Just to get your observation, if I may, really, and this time I've read it properly in terms of the distances that are quoted, but in regard to proximity of this extension in regard to Crispin's Mead, the officer says, as such, much of the first floor side extension will be visible, but the ground floor extension will be entirely screened from view by the height difference and the vegetation along the shared boundary. I mean, is that's a view that you'd accept, presumably?
Well, we don't see the ground floor now. What we do see is the first floor, and we will see more of the first floor if this is built.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Wyatt.
Thank you.
Mr. Stent now, please.
Sorry.
Mr. Stent, you have 4 minutes and 1 minute's notice.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Chairman, committee members. I appreciate this is probably the last one, so I won't be too long, I'll be as quick as I can, and I won't duplicate. Obviously, this is a symmetrical design from the previous one you've just seen, the case for Mr. Burnett. Like Mr. Burnett, I've lived in Hannington for a very long time. It's actually over 10 years. I'm from Basingstoke originally, and I love living in the village, as we both do. I'm also very aware of the responsibility we have of maintaining the visage of the village green and how important that is to the centre of village life. Like Mr. Bennett, I'm going to have an expanding family soon, and I will need more space. And we've both tried to work together with the planning officers to put together what is the most sympathetic and sensible proposal that incorporates what we would need from our property, but also in keeping with the village. I won't go into the details in terms of the design because it's exactly symmetrical to the one you've just seen. I can answer the questions if you have any about the garage. In terms of the process, we both went to the planning committee, the duty planning officers, and got feedback in terms of the subservience design, dimensions and building materials, and these were all used in our proposal. Essentially, that is the summary. I please ask you to approve the proposal as it is given.
Thank you, Mr. Stent. Any questions from Mr. Stent, members? Councillor Bound.
Is it your intention to build the garage?
Yes, if that's possible.
Any other questions for Mr. Stent? Thank you, Mr. Stent. And can you press the button on the machine? Thank you. Questions to officers, members? None? Yes, Councillor Taylor.
Could you just clarify the position with the garage? I'm not quite understanding it. There's a garage on this proposal here. So what are we talking about with the other permission?
So as indicated in the main report, previous proposal for the conversion of the existing garage to living accommodation and the erection of a detached garage was granted planning permission, and I assume that would be with a condition to ensure implementation within 3 years. There is nothing to obviously if this were to be approved, then obviously the garage that's already extant could also be implemented as per that permission.
Any other questions? No? Can we have some debate then, please? Thank you, Councillor Potter.
I mean, dealing, Chair, with this application in its own right, which we're bound to do, and obviously I understand the point of Councillor Taylor's question in regard to the extant approval, but I mean, as an ex-architect, I like symmetry, and I have to say, looking at the last application, if I were to do so in isolation, the thing that would have concerned me really was the balance with the adjacent property. That doesn't apply. I mean, this will be symmetrical, it will match, and therefore, by definition, I see absolutely no reason not to recommend approval, and I'd move it again, Chairman, if I may.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hood. Any further comments? No? Those in favour of approval? Thank you. Anyone against? No. The motion is therefore carried. Can you conclude it, please? Thank you.
The application is approved subject to the conditions in the main report.
Thank you. Right, we move on now. Bypass number 8 because it's been deleted to number 9. Paper C. Right.
Thank you, Chair. Paper C, this is effectively a slightly unusual paper in that it relates to a planning application that's been before Development Control Committee before back in October 2011. It was an application for an outline application where access only was being considered for 122 dwellings at the Trumpet Junction site, which is a local plan allocated site for housing. Essentially, since that resolution to grant planning permission, which was subject to a Section 106 agreement being signed, there's been significant delays in completing that agreement for various reasons, including the sale of the land from the Highways Agency to the Homes and Communities Agency, which meant that the Section 106 has stalled. On that basis, it was felt appropriate to bring the matter back to the Development Control Committee, given the time that's elapsed on the first resolution. And the paper C, despite all the number of pages there, the main element of the paper are the first 6 pages, sections 1 through to 6, and that's really to update members on what's changed in planning policy terms in the interim. but also critically in terms of the viability that was submitted on the first application, because there's been a change in position on that, and that mainly relates to the fact that the applicant now knows more about the land conditions, therefore doesn't require as much contingency in the pot, if you like, can now provide 36% affordable housing compared to the 25% affordable housing proposed previously. So in essence, the recommendation is for the application still to be approved, subject to a Section 106 agreement as per the original, the only change being that there would be a 36% affordable housing provision rather than a 25%.
Members, there's nobody to speak. Councillor Frankham.
Can I say, when I first got this, I had a red mist moment, because as the ward councillors, we'd not been informed that this was coming forward. I think this is almost a separate application. The original application I withdrew because I'd already objected, and I objected on the housing mix. This is completely changed. So I do feel that if we get something like this again, I'm sure other ward members would be just as irritated as I was that we were not informed. And because it was done paper C, wasn't done like you just said, item 9, which is what I thought it would be. I hadn't looked at it when we were going to do the site visit. So I had literally a couple of days. And Mike will verify the fact that we've had more than several emails going backwards and forwards with questions. If I say I objected, as I say, on the original, I think this is much better, and it's gone from the 25% to 36% with the option for the extra 4% if viable. But this actually begs another question from me, that we as members should have some training and knowledge of how this affordable housing and viability works, and why some developer can say they don't have to comply with the 40% affordable housing. I have spoken to Mike about this, and he has emailed me back a question. Also, Councillor Potter and other members in the past have said that we don't understand how they do the viable, and we should know about this, and in fact it should be part of the papers. If you've got that it's commercially sensitive, then we do have the option of having pink papers. I'd also like to say that on the 106 contributions, I could actually jump up and down and say, well, it's in Popley West, so for education, community space, community facilities, etc., should go to Popley. However, as we spoke about common sense earlier, I am aware that this is almost part of Rooksdown. It's over the other side of the road, and so therefore, yes, the money should possibly go, or at least the bulk of it, go there. So I'd just like to point that out, that this is another reason why we need to send this problems or changes back to another committee, because this is coming up again, that you're going to be giving to another ward, where in actual fact the impact will be in Rooksdown. It won't be in Popley. And maybe that's, some might say it's rather silly. I should be turning around and say it's Popley money, we want it. I want it to go to the community that has the impact. So I really do think, this needs to be looked at. We are the members and we should be making the policies, and clearly something's wrong. And the last thing I'd like to comment on this application is I note on the notes the applicant, there's a note about the soakaways. Do we as an authority ask the utilities, or expect the utilities, to tell those people that buy or live in those properties, that they will not have to pay the surcharge on the surface water, which is something, I know it's only about £23 a year, but I found out that I didn't have to pay it. This then stands for all of Popley, Popley Norton, and a lot of other places. We can't go back, but we can make sure that residents, that we are a responsible authority, and that we make sure that if this is the case, then the residents should know. And I won't propose it at this moment. I think I'd rather want to hear what other people say first.
Thank you, Councillor Frankham. I think Mike Townsend will have something to say.
Thank you, Chair. Dealing with the soakways issue first, essentially the answer is no. We as a planning authority wouldn't notify. That would be an arrangement between any service provider and a potential property buyer in future. On the three other issues that Councillor Frankham has raised, and we have had a really constructive discussion over the last couple of days on this, this type of paper is unusual. It is in some ways a kind of almost a refreshing of a resolution. There isn't actually anything changed in the application that we would then normally do an amended consultation on. But I absolutely understand the point that Councillor Frankham has raised, and that because it's not a normal or regular application item for the agenda, then there should be some form of notification and discussion with the local ward member, and I will ensure that in future case officers do have that discussion early on, so that when the agenda's coming out, you know that it's there and it's there to be seen. In terms of the viability information, I mean, the reports we provide to the committee are really trying to strike that balance, if you like, between the detail of what the kind of key conclusions of the assessment are. The sort of process we go through is always to secure the viability information, to have it sort of tested externally by an independent party, in this case the district valuer we used on other sites, to ensure that what's being submitted is robust. During the course of the application, members are absolutely entitled to see that. We wouldn't normally publish it as part of the report, but are absolutely entitled to see that. I think a separate point, if I've understood the point correctly, is the understanding of viability issue as a whole, which isn't an easy subject to get to grips with. It's not easy for officers either. If it would assist at some point, we can certainly arrange the district value or someone to come in, or some organisation to come in, if members would find that useful for discussion, and or as officers we'd be happy to sort of explain in more detail, perhaps in an informal session, perhaps after viewings, the approach that we go through, if that would assist in future applications that come before you. So I'll leave that with the committee to decide, and if there is something you'd like to do, then I'm sure you'd approach the chair on it. Finally, on the section 106, again, I do understand the issue, and obviously you've heard the points raised on the Chapel Hill application earlier as well. I think that is probably more the other end of the process, if you like, so rather than the planning application stage in terms of securing section 106 contributions. I think that's more of an issue of how they're then spent, which is through the other departments of the council. So I think if that was an issue that you wanted to look at, it'd probably be for another committee, not necessarily development control.
Councillor.
Yes, I just want to say it is different. It is very different, because the objection, and if I remember rightly, in fact, I went back on the webcast, because obviously I was outside, which I think was ridiculous, and obviously now that's changed since then. But at that time, you used to have to go outside the room. But they took the vote, and you had to take the vote again, which was bizarre, because normally you take the vote, that's it, that's the course. But on that night, it was taken back, and it was on housing mix. So what has changed on this is substantially the housing mix. Whereas I objected at the last time, I'm much more inclined to actually propose this on this time, because it has reached the housing mix, but with the provision, obviously, that when they do with the viability, the extra 4% that the officers, I'm sure, would like to see, because we want to hit our targets, you know, that's actively worked towards getting that other 4%. And I think we make the policy. We need to do something to tell developers you can't keep on finding these excuses to make it less than 40%. Because we know that at the moment land values are high, house prices are high, there are the profits there. So why are we accepting lower housing, affordable housing with a waiting list, with people being overcrowded and absolute desperate, while the developers sit there laughing all the way to the bank? So I do think that we've really got to look at this, and it's something I think you've probably guessed by now I feel very passionate about.
Thank you, Councillor Frankham. Any other comments? Councillor Potter.
Well, if I may, Chairman, just briefly, I mean, you know, I'm pleased to see the changes that have occurred in regard to affordable housing. I mean, you know, due to market conditions and, you know, the reassessments in terms of the site assessment aspects of it. The point I think that Mike has referred to, and Councillor Frankham obviously raised with him anyway, I think, I mean, is this greater understanding that I think probably we need as a development control committee in regard to the viability tests that are applied. I mean, it is a detailed area, I realise that. I mean, there are a whole lot of issues that come into play in regard to that, and the consultants that are employed by both parties and the district values observations on all of that, I know can be fairly technical, but I mean, as the 40% provision is a key element in regard to, and what will be part of our local plan, I think we need to have a better understanding, certainly than I've got at the present time. And it isn't just the original application and what the developer pleads at that time. We often have, or we have had situations where developments commence, and then as the thing progresses, the developers come forward and say situations have changed, the market's changed, we're not now able to achieve what we said we would originally, and that by definition is an amendment to the original 106 agreement. All of that, I think we need to get a much better grip about. It doesn't mean we all want to act as those experts within the field, but I think I'd certainly feel more comfortable if we could, A, have a session involving people like the district valuer, and second, I think after one of our viewing panels, if we could have a brief session with Mike or others, whoever he allocates to that, really to just explain it a little bit more in regard to the way they approach those matters, I'd feel more comfortable with that. But going back to this one, there aren't what I would describe as material change. I think that's included within the report. I'm comfortable, much more comfortable with the 36%. I hope, as Councillor Frankham says, we'll actually achieve the extra 4% as the thing develops. But on that basis, I'd certainly want to say we should approve this, Chair, as it's written before us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You've proposed it. Yeah. No, you did it beautifully. Thank you. I have a proposer and a seconder. Those in favour of approval? Thank you. The motion is carried. Lee, are you going to, do you want to wind up? No, you don't have to. Well, thank you all very much indeed, and good night.